Welcome once more to Reese Rambles, my weekly wrap-up of all the comings and goings and movings and shakings and all that kind of stuff in the retro gaming world. I hope you're all doing well. Of course, this being the official podcast of Controller Reese. That's a lot of stuff to try and jam into an intro, isn't it? And yeah, this is my third attempt at recording this intro and this first story because on the first attempt, my microphone wasn't plugged in, and on my second attempt, I was completely out of focus. To be fair, I was probably out of focus for the first attempt as well, but I was too preoccupied with the microphone thing. But I have a lot of stuff to cover in this week's Ramble, which is nice for a change. So I guess I'm going to dive straight in. And the first story, and this is one that's really been doing the rounds this week, but I was quite impressed with this, and also it links to something that really amused me as well. This is a new world record that has been set for the most games consoles connected to one TV. So this is on Vice.com, but of course I think this has been on all the news outlets this week. And the headline here is Guy sets world record by plugging 444 gaming consoles into a single TV. And there is a picture of him looking quite pleased with himself there, as you would be. So yeah, of course, the name of the person involved isn't Guy. Literally, it's not Guy Fieri or Guy Ritchie or Guy Smiley. Was he a Muppet? Guy Smiley. I can't think of any other famous guys, but there you go. Ibrahim Al Nasser is the name of the guy involved here, and it goes on to say that he's a gamer who has accomplished a feat that will make anyone who's struggled to plug multiple video game consoles into a single TV stare in awe and wonder. This definitely reads like it was written by ChatGPT, doesn't it? But he has set a Guinness World Record for connecting 444 gaming consoles to a single TV. And there is an embedded video here, which is on the Guinness World Records official YouTube channel. Of course, everything that I mention in this ramble will be linked in the usual places. And he has quite an impressive collection. Well, I think quite an impressive collection is probably understating it somewhat. He's got everything, every console you could possibly think of. Really puts my little collection here to shame, and people tell me that I've got too much stuff. But yeah, he's got all the handhelds, he's got arcade machines, he's got everything from, you know, the earliest Coleco and Intellivision and Atari 2600s, all the way up to the very latest and greatest. Speaking of greatest, I think that was an Atari ST on the top of the stack there. So he's got all the plug-and-play TV joysticks and everything. Those arcade Pandora sticks. Anyway, you can go and watch the video if you want to see exactly what he's got. But yeah, so it goes on to say, the guy is an organisational master with probably some of the best cable management skills the world has ever seen. And how he did it is frankly more impressive than the fact that he did it at all. So this is impressive. The consoles are connected via 30 RCA switches and at least 12 HDMI switches. I noticed that I had a big stack of gaming consoles that I couldn't play, Al Nasser said. The TV ports are limited, so I either had to unplug existing consoles or add more switches and converters. And basically, he has a Excel spreadsheet documenting what's plugged into what and what combination of switches he has to press to get any particular console to appear on the TV, which I thought was a really cool setup. I must admit, I think the programmer in me was, I started pondering things about Arduinos and sort of switching stuff automatically, perhaps having some kind of app or something. But hey, running around the room pressing various buttons to try and get your Dreamcast to appear on the TV, why not? Why not? It's madness. I love it. Glorious madness. But yeah, yes, it's an impressive gaming setup, but Al Nasser says it really functions more as a gaming museum. He has nearly every video game console ever made hooked up to a single giant TV. You could conceivably get a sample of every era of video game history from beginning to end, all in one room, Vice goes on to say. And then he talks a little bit about cable management and stuff. But then I love this closing chapter on this story. It should be noted that Guinness World Records don't really mean much. You can kind of just buy them. And I noticed that this was a link, and I knew what this was going to be before I clicked on it. This is a great video by H. Bomber Guy. And if you don't know H. Bomber Guy, he does these big investigative journalism type videos where he really kind of deep dives into weird stuff that most people don't care about. And this one's about Tommy Tallarico, who is the guy behind the recent Intellivision Amico console reboot. Quite a controversial figure. And how he claimed to have invented one of the sound effects in Roblox, a game that all the kids are playing. And basically, the story kind of starts off with that and then goes into this massive 2-hour-long deep dive into Tommy Tallarico himself and his various scams. Am I allowed to say that? There is a whole chapter on here about his collection of Guinness World. I think he had 7. I haven't watched this video for a while, but I'm sure he's got 7 Guinness World Records, and it turned out that they were all in things that he'd basically invented. He'd basically, actually invented the categories for them, and also submitted all of the evidence that he was the world record holder. I mean, Guinness World Records it's just a money making up, scheme, isn't it? But to be fair, 444 consoles. I mean, I think it's a little bit unfair to associate Mr. Ibrahim Al Nasser with that kind of stuff, because it's impressive. It's genuinely impressive, and you can see it all in action on this video. And I just thought that was really cool. And, if anyone tells me in future that I've got too much stuff here, I'll just point them to this article and this video. This next story is very close to home for me in multiple ways. Geographically, because it happened literally quite close to my home, but also it reminded me of my own childhood and of a childhood computing experience that I think many British people around my kind of age will have shared. And it's also a computer that I have in my collection, just going back to the whole topic of having too much stuff. Although sadly it's kind of criminally underutilized in my case. I might have to get it out and have a play with it, because it is a bit of a classic. But yes, this was on the BBC News website, believe it or not. Talk about mainstream news outlets this week. And it's quite a nice little story, and it's not really much of a story, but I think it's something that I think a lot of us in kind of the hardware repair and kind of refurbishment, what's the word I'm looking for? Restoration community. We all have this kind of common goal and this common interest, and this is just a normal guy who seems very much on our wavelength. So let's switch to the story. Let's stop with the old waffling. This headline is vintage BBC computer found at tip, rehomed in museum. And look at this chap. He looks so happy with himself, and so he should be. So this is on the BBC News website this week. And it goes on to read, a vintage BBC computer that was rescued from a Derbyshire tip has gone on show at a museum in Sheffield. Ilkeston resident Matthew Bostock spotted the strange computer at his local recycling centre before Derbyshire County Council donated it to the National Video Game Museum. Mr. Bostock's find turned out to be a working BBC microcomputer, an iconic. Why is iconic in inverted commas there? That's undisputable. An iconic 8-bit home computer launched in 1981 to improve computer literacy in schools. And he's quoted here as saying, "I'm just pleased that we saved this item rather than it being recycled or going for scrap," said Mr. Bostock. "Thanks to the staff at the recycling centre for helping to rescue it when I pointed it out, and to the county council for finding such a good home for it." Isn't that nice? Of course, the reason people like me rescue these things and fix them up and sell them is because we think we're all doing it for some greater good, and that one day it's going to educate people. And, I try to educate people through my YouTube channel, of course, but then there are museums very much on the same wavelength as me. And to have spotted an old BBC micro in a rubbish tip, and to have had the wherewithal and the that's not the right word, but to have brought it to the attention of the people actually working at the tip and said, look, this thing's quite interesting, it's quite valuable, and for them to actually go on and donate it to a museum, and for it to actually be used in the museum. I mean, this is a picture of it, a picture of it being used in the museum. That's great, isn't it? That's lovely. It's good to reduce the amount of e-waste in the world and get some more use out of these old things, and educate people about the history of them. So I love this story. Of course, it's very much on my wavelength. And yeah, of course, it goes on to talk to John O'Shea, who is the creative director at the National Video Game Museum. And basically, he goes on to say, "We welcome this addition to our museum and thank the County Council for donating it to us. It's a special item helping to tell a story of British innovation in the 1980s and 90s, and it shows how computing is integral to education right up to the present day." Of course, the BBC Micro, I need to do a video about the BBC Micro, but the BBC Micro was made by Acorn, who you've probably heard of, as they invented the ARM CPU, and the Acorn Archimedes, which is a fantastic machine. It was invented by Acorn as part of the BBC's computer literacy programme. There's a fantastic TV movie called Micro Men, which involves the early days of Acorn and Sinclair, which is very worth searching out. In fact, that was actually made by the BBC many, many years ago, but it is on YouTube. In fact, if I remember, I'll dig up the link and I'll link to that as well down in the usual places. But what a great story. Saving an old BBC Micro from a tip, and now it's being used in a museum. More of this kind of thing. Now, do you remember the Philips CDi? No, I don't actually remember it. Of course, I'm aware of it. I've heard of it. I know it's a thing, but I don't actually remember ever coming across one back in the day, which is quite unusual considering, according to Wikipedia, it was on sale for 8 years from 1990 to 1998. So, I mean, you know, they were kind of my formative years, the years that I was growing up. I mean, I would have been, 6 in 1990. So, yeah, I don't know a single person who owned a CDi, but it's become this kind of legendary thing. And it was such an ambitious project as well to have a CD-based system. And I'm not going to say console because, of course, it is well known for its games. But it was more than that, a CD-based system that you could have, you know, like reference libraries, Encarta-type stuff, edutainment-type stuff. I'm not just reading this from Wikipedia. And it even had internet features, including subscriptions, web browsing, downloading, email, and online play. Yes, the Philips CDi, of course. But why bring it up today? I mean, it's a format that's long dead and buried, although I certainly do have precedent for that on this podcast and indeed on my channel. Well, the reason is because it's getting a MiSTer Core. Oh, yes. So this comes to us via timeextension.com. The ill-fated Philips CDi is getting its own MiSTer FPGA core. This repository is very experimental. Use at your own risk. Thank you, Damien. The Philips CDi was one of several attempts during the early 90s to fuse the worlds of multimedia and video games, and outside of playing host to some unlikely Nintendo-themed titles, was it the one that had that weird Mario Hotel thing? Yeah, maybe it was. It wasn't a tremendous commercial success. As a result, there hasn't been a whole lot of desire to replicate the system using FPGA technology. Until now, that is. Developer Slammy has begun work on an FPGA core that will be playable on the MiSTer platform. At the moment, it's still at a very early stage, but given how quickly cores for the Saturn and N64 have evolved, we'd hoped that it will mature fairly quickly. Oh, I don't put too much pressure on the guy. Wow, blimey. Released in 1990, CDi Compact Disc Interactive was jointly developed by Philips and Sony and was initially intended to be a new means of distributing video, music, and other data. Of course, they had music CDs that had like extra interactive features and stuff on them, didn't they? Like artwork and stuff, I remember. But it would be in the realm of video games where CDi would be applied the most robustly. When Sony's deal with Nintendo to create a CD-ROM drive for the SNES fell through, the former intended to work with Philips on a replacement, but it never happened. However, as part of the deal, Philips was permitted to use Nintendo IP in CDi titles, which resulted in games such as Hotel Mario and Zelda Faces of Evil. I know that Hotel Mario thing was a CDi thing. Let's just have a look at that. I think I remember reporting on this story, actually, about someone finding a rare Hotel Mario prototype. Anyway, weird game that, but yeah, there is a GitHub repository with the code, with the core for the CDi on the MiSTer. Always great to have more platforms. Of course, the MiSTer it's all about preservation. It's all about letting people experience these machines, that, you know, stuff that people might not be able to get their hands on in real life, and doing it in as authentic a way as possible. You know, of course, being hardware based, using that FPGA chip. I've gone over this 1,000 times before, but really is the best way to kind of to replicate the functionality of those original systems and really give people a really authentic experience. So, hey, cool, having the CDi on there is awesome as well. I think the controllers on the, it's going off on a tangent here. I'm sure the controllers on the CDi were like very similar to the Gravis gamepad, weren't they? With like they were like the bone shape with the buttons and the anyway. So at the moment, the CDi mono board low-level test is functional, ROM parity check passed, DRAM test passed, NVRAM test passed, CDIC test passed, test only memory, slave processor test passed, SDRAM interface. I'm not going to sit here and read a whole list of bullet points to you, but it's not running games yet. It's still quite a way off, but it is booting. It's booting the original CDi ROMs and stuff somewhat. And of course, it's also talking about how they could, you know, having to try to avoid legal issues because, of course, they can't distribute that ROM code with the core because they don't own it. But all problems that have been solved in the past with various other MiSTer cores. And if you want to have a play with this thing, and I must admit, I like to wait until these things are a little bit more done and there's something to actually look at. But if you want to have a play with this thing, of course, it's all open source. It's all on GitHub. It is all released under the GPL3 license, which is very cool. Hey, you could even get involved with the development if you like, if you get in touch with a developer. And yeah, just wanted to wish Slammy all the best with this project, because it's not a console that I own or that I have any desire to own, but certainly if it's on MiSTer, I could see myself checking out some of those games and those other titles. So very cool work. Speaking of very cool things, it's about time we talked a little bit about my YouTube channel, isn't it? Yes, my favourite subject, but some really big milestones this week, and one in particular that I really want to shout from the rooftops, because I'm quite proud. I'm quite proud of what I've achieved in the past 4 short years with the channel. Although, will it be 5 years? Yeah, it's November, I think, with the first video, November 2019. So we're actually coming up on 5 years. I should probably do something to mark the occasion. But anyway, that's not the milestone. Let's jump into this, and then we can get back to our news stories. So my most recent video is all about the Mac Mini and about upgrading it far beyond what Apple ever intended. And this video has gone down an absolute storm, had loads of awesome feedback. I don't think I've had a single negative comment on this one. I've had loads of people trying to help out and giving me advice and suggestions and things to try and get something working. I don't want to spoiler it too much because, of course, this only came out on Wednesday and you may well be saving it for the weekend. You may not have seen it yet. So, but yeah, it all generally went to plan. Really awesome system, this. I've actually spent all morning playing with it over the other side of the studio, and I'm actually a bit late sitting down to record this, which is pretty much a typical story for me. But yeah, it's... Of course, I upgraded the CPU in that. I upgraded the RAM, double the amount of RAM that Apple actually allowed by installing a hacked firmware, so that's quite interesting. Put an SSD in there, of course, and then started messing around with eGPUs, external GPUs, putting a full-blown desktop graphics card in a Mac Mini. Obviously not physically in it, because it wouldn't. It's about the same size as the Mac Mini. But yeah, this video has done 10,700 views so far, which is pretty remarkable. In fact, it was my fastest first 24 hours for any video I've ever made. So just to put that into perspective, the Pentium 4, Windows 11 Pentium 4 video did 3,100 views in its first 24 hours, and this one did 8,300. It's like nearly 3 times as much. And the infamous solar video that went viral a while back that I got like nearly 1 million views on in the end. I checked that, and that had done, I think, 1,400 in its first 24 hours. Any video that I launch, if it does 1,000 views in its first 24 hours, I'm happy with it. You know, it's nice to have 1,000 people, and if it goes on to have 2, 3, 4, 5,000 views on it, that's cool. But things are going crazy just lately. I don't know if I've particularly struck a chord with people, or I have been working hard on these videos, so it's good to see that recognised. But yeah, as you can see, I got my 10,700 views. That pretty much all happened in the first day or so. In fact, 10,000 views. Let's take a look at this. So yeah, it was around yesterday afternoon. YouTube decided to turn the taps off, and you can see that very evidently in the real time views on the graph. And it has really dropped off. But still, we're still looking at, 40, 50 people an hour watching that video. That's cool. That's cool to know. 1 person every minute almost clicks on that video. You never know, it might pick up again. But really pleased with that, pleased with the reception. And it was such a cool project to work on, and one that's definitely not finished. And I just wanted to revisit my previous video. And not my previous video, that was a PicoMem one, but my previous sort of crazy video, which was the Windows 11 Pentium 4 thing. That's still going absolutely crazy. In fact, that's doing more views per hour than the one that we just talked about, the Mac Mini. That's doing, 80, 90, 70, something like that. Just coming up on 75,000 views on that video in, what was it, the 12th of July that went out. So, yeah, in a month, pretty much. 75,000 views in a month. That's crazy. 68.9 thousand more than usual. Really pleased with that one as well. I was really glad with how that came together. I'm not sitting here, I'm not wanting to brag about this kind of stuff. I just know that you guys are interested in my stats and the behind the scenes kind of thing. And then the one that came out in the middle of those two was the one about the PicoMem, of course, that excellent project by Freddie V with the Raspberry Pi Pico on the old ISA bus in those old computers, adding all sorts of awesome functionality like disk drive emulation and Wi-Fi and all that cool stuff. AdLib emulation, how cool is that? And indeed, the Raspberry Pi Pico 2 was announced last week. In fact, it was actually released last week. And it is pin compatible and software compatible with the original Pico. And it's not my place to give away people's plans and things, but I have spoken to some hardware developers who are working on Pico-based projects, and they are very excited about incorporating some of the new functionality in the Pico 2 into their projects, which is really cool. Yeah, so that's that. 34,000 views on that one as well. I mean, that is not to be sniffed at, is it? And what's that? When did that one come out? Who knows? 26th of July. Yeah, so, just over 3 weeks ago. Cool stuff. And I also mentioned, and we will get back to our news stories very, very shortly, I also mentioned that there was a big milestone that I wanted to celebrate. And I didn't want to make this the lead story because this isn't all about me, but I do want to mark this occasion. 30,000 subscribers I passed today, as at the time of recording. So I'm recording this on the Friday, the 16th. And yeah, 30,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel in less than 5 years. I think that's quite the achievement. I'm quite proud of that. Quite a few of those people were off the back of the solar video, of course, and I can't imagine any of those people are watching that channel, watching my channel now, due to the complete and utter lack of solar content. But hey, you got to take what you can get. So 30,000 subscribers. I also know that my good friend Dave from Rose Tinted Spectrum, or otherwise known as Rosie, he passed 10,000 this week as well. So I should give him a bit of a shout out as well because I love the guy, and you might see me chatting with him at some point in the near future. So that's my my updates for my channel, the behind the scenes stuff. Let's get on and we'll do a few brief. I can't use that word, can I? That's this week in retro thing. We'll just have a quick look at some of the news stories from this week. So let's take a look at some of those stories that have caught my attention this week, but perhaps don't warrant their own whole dedicated sections in this week's Ramble, but definitely worth acknowledging. And the first one is quite amusing. This one made me laugh when I saw the headline pop up, and it only gets better from there. So this is at timeextension.com. Sierra's Ken Williams is as confused as you about Colossal Cave's tiny box. I'm not sure why the box is so small, is the tagline. And yes, that is a direct quote from legendary game developer Ken Williams. And this, of course, is Ken and Roberta Williams' Colossal Cave, which was recently reimagined for a new generation, as reported here by Time Extension. And they worked with Limited Run Games, who, of course, do a lot of these reissues and things for these classic games. And basically to create a physical release of this thing. And there's a photo of this, and this thing, someone's holding it in their hand next to some PC kind of big box games, and this thing's, I mean, what would you compare that to size-wise? It's like a cassette tape, or it's just funny just how tiny this thing is. And the issue here is that the end result is a little less colossal than people were expecting. The game is now arriving in the hands of those who pre-ordered it, and many are slightly taken aback by the fact that it ships in such a tiny box. But that box does have some good stuff in it. It's got the old feelies, it's got a USB stick, it's got a book in there and some other books and bits and bobs, and there's also a Steam key, so you can just buy the game on Steam and leave that box unsullied. So that did amuse me when that popped up on my radar this week. Also, I thought this was quite interesting, just while we're talking about these kind of classic. I can't segue from this one to this one. Let's just do this. So this is on Ars Technica, and this is Diablo, which is now fully playable in a browser. This is an open source third-party project. It's not an official release. Hopefully, it won't get taken down. Must admit, Diablo is a game that I was very, very aware of it at the time, and I think I probably would have enjoyed it. I think it probably would have been my kind of thing, but it's one that I've not played. So, hey, this really does lower the barrier for entry to that. And the story basically says that you can now play the original Diablo and its expansion Hellfire in virtually any web browser on any computer with generally excellent performance and operating as expected controls. It's all thanks to an open source project published on GitHub called Diablo Web that's now being circulated by game developers on X. And so it's based on another open source project called Devolution X, and modified the code to remove all dependencies, expose the minimal required interface with JavaScript, allowing the game to be compiled into WebAssembly. Is there anything you can't do with WebAssembly? So, if you're a fan of the classic Diablo, or if, like me, you haven't got around to checking it out over the years, that's an easy way to go and do that. So, very cool project. Next up, there is a new Xbox 360 mod, and I'll just very quickly touch on this because there aren't really any technical details. I tried to find some information about this, but of course, I modded my original Xbox. I did that on my channel not that long ago, probably 6 months or so ago, and that's been a quite successful video for me. A lot of interest in that console. Quite rightly, it's a fantastic console. And after I had my Xbox back in the day, I moved on to the 360, and I still have my original 360. It's completely unmodified. I've not really bothered to get around to doing like the reset glitch hack and any of those things. Kind of biding my time waiting for an easy way to to mod that console and get all those games on there and get it hooked up again and check out some of those games from my my misspent early 20s. Yeah, we'll go with that. But yeah, basically this mod somehow involves modifying some actual code on an SSD and then inserting that into the console, and then that apparently allows you to soft mod the console and flash your own firmwares and stuff like that. I guess very similar to the Wii. Obviously, some of those it's so easy to soft mod a Wii now. You can just drop a couple of files on a USB stick and stick it in there and you're pretty much done. So looks like this is opening that up to the Xbox 360. So that is very cool. And for my last story, just for this segment, a little bit of a change of tone and a change of track. Never easy to report on these ones, but Rachel Lillis, who was the voice actor for Pokemon's Misty and Jessie, of course, in the famous cartoon in the anime series, has sadly passed away at the age of 55 this week. So this is on NintendoLife.com, and it reports that this was announced by a fellow voice actor Veronica Taylor, who voiced Ash Ketchum, of course, in the Pokemon TV series, calling Lillis an extraordinary talent and a bright light, and also reports that she was also the voice of Jigglypuff in the Smash Brothers games. So yeah. That's that. Let's move on to something else. And so we find ourselves at our weekly Video of the Week feature. Yeah, that's all you get in this week. Of course, this is my weekly feature where I talk about a video that has caught my attention on YouTube, something that I've enjoyed watching, that I found enlightening or educational or interesting, life-affirming, whatever all of those little tick boxes are that they get you to rate videos on when they recommend videos. You know the ones I mean. I'm sure you've had them pop up. And this isn't a new video. It's not something that's come out this week. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. That's not necessarily part of the criteria. But I thought it was quite interesting. And I thought it was actually quite a unique take on this style of video because, of course, I did my Kickstart video, which was kind of a vlog style. It was kind of inspired by a video that LGR had done and that I watched like the day before. And I thought, you know what, I can do that. That's not going to be too much overhead on top of all the stuff that I've got to do over the course of the weekend. And, kind of show people stuff from my point of view. And that did really well on this channel. But yeah, these kind of vlog event videos, I like watching these because I can't make it to most of these events. There's so many fantastic retro computing events and things all over the world. And I thought this was a really nice way of going about it. So this is Kate Fox, who you may know as Macintosh Librarian. Fantastic channel. Of course, she does all sorts of great stuff with old Macs and Apple IIs and Apple hardware. I guess that's the theme for this week with my Mac Mini having gone out, I guess. And she went to the Vintage Computer Festival Southwest, of course, VCF Southwest, as it is known. Oh, look at that. It's a lovely one-off Atari prototype there. That's nice to see. But if you're not familiar with her channel, she has a co-host called Mackie. In fact, she has a couple of co-hosts, but main co-host is called Mackie, and it's a Mac that speaks. And it's really cute. It's got a lot of character and stuff. It's really well done. Really sort of interesting, unique approach on these kind of retro computer videos and that kind of thing. And she has taken that format on the road, and indeed she has taken Mackie on the road as well, and done a bit of a walk around of the show and had him kind of giving his opinions and stuff on the various computers that are on show. And I just thought it was really funny. So I'm going to make this my video of the week. Apologies if you've already seen this. This did come out a month ago, but I thought it was just a really cool look at VCF Southwest. And of course, great show as well. Loads of awesome old machines and things, and lots of familiar faces, lots of YouTubers there. So I'll link to that in the usual places, as always. And yeah, go check it out and subscribe to her channel if you haven't already, because she's got loads of awesome hardware and history type stuff on there that you will very much enjoy if you are into my stuff. And that brings us to the end of this week's Ramble. So thank you ever so much for joining me again this week. The audience for this thing is really growing, so it's great to see all those views and all those comments and things. A bit of a community building up around the Rambles, which is kind of what motivates me to keep doing these things. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you this week. I just wanted to give a shout out to this game again. And no, they're not sponsored me or anything like that, but I gave this a mention last week, basically just saying that I'd kind of started playing it. I actually completed it. It only takes like 2 or 3 hours to finish it, but this is this weird British humour published by the same people as the Untitled Goose Game, if you remember that from a few years ago. It's called Thank Goodness You're Here, and basically you play it as this weird little chap who kind of runs around and slap things, and it's all cartoon style. It's got Matt Berry in it as one of the characters, and it's hilarious. The whole game is hilarious, and the ending in particular I thought was absolutely brilliant. Of course, I'm not going to give anything away here, but yeah, if you like weird stuff, it's well worth checking out. I've recommended it to a friend of mine the other day who then started messaging me about it and basically completed the whole thing in one sitting that evening because he was having such a good time with it. So great game that. Just wanted to give it a mention again. Should be on commission from these people, shouldn't I? And the other thing is, Microsoft Edge, what a pain. Obviously, I've been playing that game on my living room PC, and if I was a smarter man, I would have done a much better segue between these two stories because they are connected. But I've been playing it on my living room PC, of course. You've probably seen it in one of my videos. It's in that nice fractal north case with the wooden front and everything. You know, the one where I put the CPU cooler on the wrong way around, and it's still on the wrong way around, and it still works fine. But yeah, it's decided, and I've had this happen on a couple of other machines as well. Microsoft have decided, in all their wisdom, that I need Edge to start automatically when I turn my computer on, and I don't do any browsing on that computer whatsoever. It's literally just set up to go straight into Steam Big Picture mode. Never open a web browser on it, and I booted up the other day, and Steam Big Picture mode loaded, and Edge just kind of popped up in front of it and was like, "Oh, we're making your life easier. You can get online much quicker now because Edge starts automatically." And it's like, I didn't want that. I didn't ask for that. It's not the first time it's happened, and it probably won't be the last time it's happened. So Microsoft, cut it out. That's not cool. Anyway, that's all I have for you for this week. Thank you ever so much once more, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you again next week. If I don't release anything in the meantime, I probably won't because I'm very disorganised, and the Mac thing was a massive slog that kind of took it out of me a bit. But did enjoy doing it, and I'm glad other people are enjoying that video as well. Anyway, I'll go now. Bye.